And forgive me if I have a little bit of fun with this. As you know, Donald Trump, Anthony Albanese, will they, won't they? Well, yeah, the plan was that they were going to meet. Why? Because Trump was at the G7 in Canada and Airbus Albo was at the G7 in Canada. And the media have been absolutely salivating the capacity to look into the body language, to judge whether this was a good or positive, important meeting, whether they were going to get proof of Orange Man bad. And the pump-up's been going for a while, including an editorial that Canada was a good middle ground for Albanese and Trump to meet, as if we were in a war with the United States. What an absurd thing for people to start building up the scales of this thing. Same paper, same people who decided to send a flock of people to report on this one, that this was the most important meeting of Albanese's career. And when they thought a meeting was going to be happening tomorrow, listen to the questions that were being asked of our Prime Minister as if literally he was meeting a country we've been at war with for 20 years. Have a listen to how pumped up they are.
Is it unreasonable to expect you'll get a concrete outcome tomorrow?
You said that you had extended an invite to Mr Trump for him to come to Australia. I was just wondering if you've heard back from that. And is that something you plan on raising with him tomorrow?
Do you consider it's highly unlikely that Australia will be able to get the US to move on at least the 10% tariffs?
The Trump meeting is one of the final things on President Trump's agenda before he rushes off. Are you concerned at all that you'll get your whole full-time slot with him?
Following tomorrow's meeting, when do you foresee that you'll likely meet him next?
Ooh, this was dreams come true. There was fears that it would happen behind the scenes, so they were doing everything they possibly could to make sure that the cameras would be let in. No such tension around the president of China. No, because Orange Man bad equals click, 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 click in a country where, yeah, the majority of people don't like Donald Trump. I'm completely aware of this, all right? But the stakes. Well, as you know, Donald Trump has got bigger things to do than stick around the G7. Now, before we start to think that this means Australia has been insulted or flushed down the toot, no, reality is there'll be a meeting at some other point in time. But the very same people who were talking about the most important meeting of the Prime Minister's career, well, they told finally the truth, as finally Australia was dealt with in a manner that you would think at a meeting of G7 where we are not part of the main 7 nations and we're there to tag along because we're part of the global community, but we don't have any strong positions on anything bar net zero actually happening in the global community. Because you see, we've got to go both sides of the fence here, don't we? You know, we've got to have a go at Donald Trump, but of course America, important for our defence. President Xi, we couldn't possibly mention the Uyghurs. We couldn't do what the Americans have done, which is to say slave labour that is making solar panels in China should not be allowed and we will not buy that product. Oh, no, but because that is with the other great goal, which, of course, the renewable energy sector, no, don't talk about it. Don't talk about it. But we will hold people to account and we will talk about Australia's values. Well, yeah, Australia got a reality check. Because Australia has chosen to sit back, and particularly sit back during the Trump presidency, whether you like the presidency or not, 4/5 a bugger all. And there was a time, there was a window for Australia to get the beginnings of a relationship, and it was when everyone from CEOs to world leaders were talking to Donald Trump, and it was the months between when he won the presidency in the first Tuesday in November, all of December, and all the way into the 20th of January, when they could have met with him in Mar-a-Lago. It wasn't like he was allergic to Australians. Scott Morrison literally spent New Year's Eve with him. But because, of course, there was an election coming, an Orange Man bad, and we've already set up that everything terrible in the economy is going to be Donald Trump's fault, despite the fact that the Treasury itself has promised us or predicted nothing but budget deficits for the next 40 years. $1 trillion of debt that becomes 1.2, 1.5, 1.7. And imagine when we start to push towards $2 trillion if we can't crack a budget surplus between now and the 2060s. But I must say, the one little detail, and again, if you're actually paying attention, you've heard what I've said. I hope they have a meeting. I hope there's an opportunity while he's in North America to somehow get his way towards the White House, have a chat in the next couple of days. Presumably the president would be feeling bad about bailing on the conversation, so they're eventually going to have a meeting. And by the way, the only reason the reporters were hoping he'd be invited to Australia is because they want to cover the outrage that people would have if he came to Australia. Understandably, they salivate. Why? Because this is the chance to pull on the big boy pants. This is when the global affairs. And you and I both know that Australian Prime Ministers, once they become a little bit too fixated on global affairs, they're not focused on the home game. So again, if you're paying very close attention to what I'm actually saying, the Prime Minister, who I hope has a meeting, has a good relationship, hasn't fallen completely in for the overseas stuff yet because he knows, firstly, Airbus Albo is going to come back and become a unique name for him, one that he will deserve because of the trotting all around the globe. But right now, the Airbus, it'll have a few deflated egos coming back, including the journos talking to the Prime Minister, who's going to talk about, oh, mate, I would have said really mean things to him. Sources close to the Prime Minister say. But could we just drink in one little detail? For those of us that are not fans of Albo, who do not believe that he should and will rule for the rest of our natural lives, from the Australian Financial Review and our good friend Phil Curry. Fox News reported that Trump dined with the G7 leaders in Canada and then immediately left for Washington. Australia, which is not a member of the G7, was not invited to attend the dinner. So, sorry, mate. There's only seven seats we could possibly have around this table. I know there's a few extra prime ministers. No, they have to sit at the kids' table somewhere else. Albanese was instead invited to a function with the heads of other nations, such as South Korea and Mexico. You're telling me, in all the function centres where the G7 is playing out right now, they couldn't get a little extender table to get another 3, 4, 5, 10 leaders in there to get Zelensky into the room? Or were they afraid that big bad orange man was going to yell at him again? Again, Australia, I love the fact that on the brink of what feels at times like not quite World War III, but on its way, that's playing out in other parts of the world, that we live in this wonderful island, and thankfully we are below the radar in terms of a lot of people's attention. I like that there was a little reminder of that, and I take, frankly, a little bit of strength from that. But the people that have been obsessing and pumping up and carrying on about Trump in all of it, they will, of course, be very disappointed. But again, I hope there's a meeting. He's in North America. Presumably there's an IOU. I hope it happens sooner rather than later. And guess what? Well done to whoever brokers it. But the media will just not get what they really want, which is to talk about Trump all day, every day. And a little later in the show, I'm going to show you some examples about how. Remember how they spun the ball for Albo through the election? I'll show you how they spin the ball when it comes to Trump and not quite the reality of what's been happening in the United States, like or dislike Donald Trump. And I know where the majority of Australia is. But at least we can laugh at these people every now and then.